Welcome back. So first solution we have discussed that 1947 it was there in circulation that Kashmir should become Jammu and Kashmir should become independent and the guarantee of the security should be the common responsibility of India and Pakistan. This discussion was there in so much debate during 1947-48. But you can take the responsibility, but you cannot take the responsibility where the non-state actor is or the state actor. There is hardly to distinguish, and ultimately there will be a sufferance of the people of Jammu and Kashmir. Secondly, why we don't accept the thing that Kashmir during that time Pakistan was claiming, but Pakistan was based on the two-nation theory, but India did not. So why we consider Kashmir Muslim majority area in terms of giving it to the Pakistan? So obviously this question solution is definitely not there because we have not born on the basis of two-nation theory. It's Pakistan. So whether it is a Muslim majority area or a Hindu majority areas, the India should be considered as for all as per our basic foundation of. So should not compromise on two-nation theory. Jinnah insisted in 1944 that Congress should accept the two-nation theory. That is a major reason of the failure of Gandhi-Jinnah talk. Third was that why there was no referendum. So since Pakistan did not comply with the UN resolution first, the first clause of the referendum was that Pakistan should hand over the entire POK in the hands of Indian administration, and after that we can think about referendum. So this is the problem from the Pakistan side first. And fourth is that line of control should be transformed into international border. This is also going on through the debate in political circle. Line of control should be turned into international border. So the only solution that as per the Simla spirit and others, that the POK is part of India, that the solution should start from here only. So these are the issues related to the partition plan. So we will take the rehabilitation of refugees, that is rehabilitation of refugees or the post partition plan. There are many things related to rehabilitation of refugees. Post-partition impact. The multiple problem that India was facing at that time, the rehabilitation of refugees. So, if you compare the advantage between India and Pakistan, the advantage to India in 1947 was that India had a democratically evolved political party. Evolved political party. Democratically evolved political party. Its leadership was very much connected to the people. So democratically evolved political party, there was hierarchy of arrangements. Second, leadership was connected to the people. Leadership was connected to people. And the Mountbatten was the Governor General who greatly helped in consolidation of India. Mountbatten as Governor General of independent India greatly helped in consolidation of India. So democratically evolved political party. So the political structure of India was rock solid with the democracy. Indian National Congress. It had a very strong evolution, strong connectivity with local to regional to provincial to the national level. The leadership of India was also very much connected, deeply connected with the people. And then Mountbatten, he was serving as a Governor General of India. So obviously, these three things was getting to be exact advantage to India compared to Pakistan. So in Pakistan, obviously, there was no democratic sentiments at all. Leadership was imposed. So there was hardly any connectivity we can see at any level. So leadership was India was well and evolved. So rehabilitation of refugee was the very big task So around 60 lakh people migrated, huge migration to India from both west and east side. This migration, around 60 lakh population was there from the west and the east side. This transfer of population was least expected outcome. Was least expected outcome. So it was least expected outcome of partition. And their rehabilitation was very important for the stability of newborn Indian nations. Their rehabilitation. So the rehabilitation was very important for the newborn Indian nation. Refugees always had a great burden on any economy, and its unsettled rehabilitation may cause massive violence or the communal conflict. So the social unrest was possible, local crimes can be inflated. So this is reason why the rehabilitation was very important for the stability of newborn Indian nations. Therefore, the settlement of refugees has to be taken with great care. 60 lakh population was transferred from both sides. So they came to India from West Pakistan and East Pakistan. Refugees are a great burden to, a big burden to economy. Big burden to economy. Its improper settlement may cause huge social conflict. Huge social conflict and encouragement to local crimes, because they were having the communal passion. They left the place, deserted, their entire socio-economic and material had been destroyed. So therefore, the partition, the most of the refugees nurture command passion, communal passion. Their proper rehabilitation and integration was very important to control the communal violence in India. So they were nurtured because when they came to India, they had lost many things on the way. The humiliation to women, folk, casualties and destruction of the material, destruction of their traditional land. Many things was taken up with a very high speed. So refugees are a great burden on Indian economy. Improper rehabilitation may have resulted into social conflict. Most of the refugees nurture communal passion, and their proper rehabilitation and integration was very important to control the communal violence in India. So therefore, the government of India should have taken a great care because it was least expected outcome of partition. Least expected outcome of partition. So that improper rehabilitation there may lead to local crime. So not only the food crisis, which in turn was a socio-economic crisis, so any act of violence may trigger the series of violences in India. India, the newly born state, would suffer dangerously because of the improper settlement of the refugees. Improper settlement of the refugees. So the migration was all of a sudden in the Punjab side, and from the Bengal side it was gradual. So compared to the Punjab and compared to the Bengal, the all of a sudden migration was from the west side, and there was a more degree of communalism there. So rehabilitation of refugees from Punjab, that is West Pakistan, in Punjab, there was a triangular communalism, Hindus, Sikh and Muslims. So huge influx of refugees from Pakistan to Indian Punjab. Muslims, Hindus and Sikh migrated in large number. So there was triangular communalism, Hindus, Sikh and the Muslims. So most of the Punjabi speaking Hindus and Sikh came to India and the Muslims went to Pakistan. So with respect to western side of Pakistan, there was two ways of migration. Punjabi speaking Hindus and Sikh. Pakistan Muslims. Went there in the large number. So intensity of the communalism was very high from the west side. Very high. From Pakistani Punjab. Western side, it was very high. From Pakistani Punjab. They had a intense passion of communalism. There was some problem with the land distribution also. You'll find that those who came from Pakistan, both sides, they left a large amount of land there, 2.6 million hectares. Many rich had, so land left by Hindus and the Sikh. In Pakistan was 2.6 million hectare around. But land left by Muslims in India was 1.7 million hectares. So it was huge land was left there. 1.7 million hectares. So how to settle and how to compensate the land? Because those who left, it was huge. And those who left from Pakistan, left for Pakistan by leaving this much of the land. So there was a gap of 1 million hectare land. So how to compensate the land? That became a very difficult task for the government of India. Difficult task for the government of India. They had a command passion for that. So how to compensate and rehabilitate? That has to be there. So land left behind by Muslims migrated to Pakistan, 1.7 million hectare. Indians left land in Pakistan was 2.6 million hectare. Process of rehabilitation was arranged. So Government of India had made the policy of rehabilitation of the refugees. The first effort, that settlement of migration in the land vacated by the migrated Muslims, was first undertook by Government of India. So the settlement of the migrants in the land vacated by the migrants, Muslims, was first undertook by government. Hindus and Sikhs were settled in these areas. Government of India first went for temporary settlement. Each family was given 4 acres of land and along with the agricultural implements. So 4 acres of land along with the agricultural implements. And a rehabilitation committee was also formed under Trilok Singh. Rehabilitation committee was formed under Trilok Singh. So settlement of the migrants in the land vacated by the migrated Muslims was first undertook by Government of India. But the land left behind by Hindus and Sikhs in West Punjab was very high compared to those land vacated by the migrated Muslims. So temporary provision was made. Each family was given 4 hectares of land along with the agricultural implements. 4 hectares of land along with agricultural implements. Rehabilitation Secretariat was established under Trilok Singh to monitor and to find the modalities of rehabilitation. Trilok Singh. Modalities of rehabilitation. Applications were invited. Applications were invited from all of them, asking to submit some evidences on the account, means how much land they had left in Pakistan. Regarding that, the application was invited. And application was related to the proper claim along with the certificates. But those who don't have the certificate or any proof, they were asked to submit it voluntarily. And any wrong entries was very strong penalty was provided. And within a village, a discussion was held between the people to find out the truth also. So the village to village discussion was going on. Those who were from the common village, and any wrong entry was liable to huge penalty. There was huge penalty. So applications were invited, and all of them were asked to submit some evidences on the amount of land, and open assemblies were conducted among the migrants from same village in order to verify the authenticity of each and every claim, and each strict punishment were given for the wrong claims. This is the way that they try to settle the authenticity of each and every claim, and strict punishments were given for the wrong claims. Strict punishment were given. Thereafter, they adopted the graded cut. Graded cut means those who are having more land, claim of like 100 acre. So 100 acre, more land, more cut. Less land, there was a less cut. So that a graded cut was planned. So according to that standard cut, in order to rehabilitate the peasants in the available land, it has decided that the family with more land will have more cut reduction than the family with lesser land. So therefore, suppose you have 100 acre land, then 60% cut, and if 10 acres of land, then 25% cut. And this is a way, because of the huge gap, 2.6 million hectare was left there, and available land for rehabilitation was only 1.7 million hectare. So despite all these problems, the graded cut was organized. More land, more cut; less land, less cut. For example, if there is one having 100 acres of the land, 60% cut, and 10 acres land, 25% cut. This way, most of the peasant communities were rehabilitated in Punjab and the western UP. Rehabilitation of urban communities, artisans, traders, and the laborers were also a big challenge. So artisans, traders and the laborers, their settlement needed some different perspective. So they had given the land or the shops that was left by the Muslims in India. They started living in the same shop, carry out the things. Indian government has built many new townships. Like near Delhi, there was a Faridabad. In that shops, etc., were constructed with government supports. Some refugees were started living the homes left by the Muslims in Delhi. And also emergence of new colonies in Delhi where refugees started settling. So there are many refugee colonies had started settling. From the eastern side, that is in Bengal, there was less communal passion compared to western side, and most of them were the Bengali speaking. So the settlement was very unevenly distributed in entire West Bengal, and therefore this unsettled rehabilitation of the refugees created a many organized, unorganized slums in different parts of Calcutta. So here we find that there was a gradual migration of the refugees, rehabilitation of refugees from Bengal. It did not happen at once. They came gradually because there was less communal passion in this area, less communal passion compared to the western side. Means of communication was also very less. Because of this gradually migration, resettlement was very difficult. So there less communication, less communal passion. So not at once, but they came in the waves, various phases. The problem with that, the Punjabis and the Hindis had almost the same linguistics. So Bengalis did not have a linguistic affinity with the Hindi, hence could not be settled in the northern plain easily. So this was the main reason there was a huge linguistic contradictions. Government of India was thinking that uh, this migration was temporary, and once their communal passion will get over, they will return back to their own homeland. Return back to their own homeland. Government of India thought the influx should be temporary as the Bengali society was not completely communalized as that of the Punjabi society. So obviously Government of India did not take too much of the measures of settling the refugees in these areas, and therefore improper habitation of the refugees had created a large structure, numerous settled slums in and around the Calcutta. Because of these factors, the Government of India did not took up the structured rehabilitation. And most of these refugees settled down in and around Calcutta. This resulted into a numerous improper settlements in and around Calcutta. Numerous slums had developed in these regions. So this was a pattern of refugee settlements from both sides. So numerous slums had developed during this period. So these are the rehabilitation of the issues related to refugees. So let's talk about the wars that the India or the China issues. Recently, much heated now these days. wars, India-China. India and China share the historic, cultural ties, with the many Chinese visitors in India, Faiyan, Wensang. So there was a shared value of Buddhism, shared value of Buddhism, shared value of Buddhism. Both the countries had a deep-rooted historical and cultural ties. But remember one thing, that the state evolution of India and China was quite different. When in India there was a strong movement of democracy and non-violence led by Gandhi. Then in China there was Mao preparing for the armed rebellion against the state. So therefore, you must admit the thing that in the circle of the state evolution, India and China had a very different role to play. As far as border situation is concerned, after India became independent in 1947, and there was a communist revolution of China in 1949. So the border between India and China, when successfully 1949 Mao established the communist revolution in China, so state of border was that from the western side or the eastern side there was Himalayas and there was a buffer zone called Tibet. So Tibet was a buffer state between India and China. So border state between India and China. This is a state of affair. So Tibet was the buffer state between India and China. So India and China never share any border by any historical default. The long history of sharing the borders by the buffer state, that is Tibet. In 1950, Mao, China, invaded over Tibet. And thereby the history and geography of this entire region had changed significantly. And suddenly the long border of India and China started in sharing because Tibet was captured by China. So the position of the buffer state between India and China had lost. India and China had lost. India did not oppose the capture of Tibet because in past Tibet was many times remained part of the China. If you look at the 1,000 years of history, in the past there were many years India remained part of the China. value of Buddhism. So in the western side of the border, there was no such treaty or convention to define the border between India and China. In the Ladakh region or the Jammu and Kashmir region, there was no such treaty. So both the countries were using this territory as per their mutual convenience. If you look at the 1,000 years, it was not at all demarcated. During the time of Kushan, during the time of Babur, these areas was part of the India. But as far as in the recent days of the modern period, so this is how the western side, the border was not at all demarcated. But in eastern side, there was a Simla agreement known as McMahon Line, which was drawn in 1914 under the Simla agreement. China does not agree with the Simla agreement, although China was part of that agreement. According to China, this agreement was done by the colonial government of India, imperialist in nature, so therefore it should not be. So McMahon Line, 1914 Simla agreement. So China does not agree with this settlement. Despite this, the India-China border conflict was never visible in the early 1950s. Both the countries had a historic ties agreement that is called Panchasheel. Panchasheel was again a clever design of China, that after Panchasheel, India had formally accepted the Chinese position on Tibet with the words that non-interference in the internal affairs. So accepted the verdict at Tibet. But as far as border situation was concerned, it was not clear. It was not clear. Border situation was concerned, it was not clear. So Panchasheel was signed 1954. So it was again, you can see the draft of the Panchasheel, it was a clever design. Because after Panchasheel, the non-interference in the internal affairs of the country, so India accepted the Chinese position on Tibet. But at the same time, the border situation was not clarified and it was left open to discussion. So 1950, Panchsheel, clever arrangement. In 1958, official news magazine of the China Pictorial, published a map China Pictorial published a map in which the Aksai Chin and Nepha, the today's Arunachal Pradesh, and Nepha was presented as a part of India, part of China. Which further provoked the already deteriorating relation between India and China. And Chinese had claimed that we did not discuss the border issue because we are busy in settling our own internal affairs after communist revolution. So this is a reason why in the last one decade we have not discussed the border issue. But this is a right time to settle our dispute. So here comes the conflict between India and China on the borders, on the level of discussion and dialogue. First time the border issue was in the picture. Meanwhile, the religious leader of Tibet, Dalai Lama, came to India, migrated to India, and India gave shelter to him. India gave shelter to him, which further provoked the India-China relations. Further provoked the India-China relations. India gave shelter to Dalai Lama. Although India did not permit Dalai Lama to form the government, exile government in India, Dalai Lama was not permitted to form the exile government in India, Tibetan government, but shelter had created problem. No permission for government in exile government in Tibet. Exile government in Tibet. But simply giving shelter to Dalai Lama had complicated the India-China relations. Complicated India-China relations. Initially, the border management was in the hands of IB and CRPF. Military was not deployed at the border. Border management was between was managed by IB and CRPF, Intelligence Bureau and CRPF. In both sides, in the Ladakh side and in the NEFA. NEFA means Northeastern Frontier Area. Northeastern Frontier Area. NEFA. Northeastern Frontier Area. So the Intelligence Bureau and the CRPF was tackling the affair between India and China. But after this provocation, India decided to put its military. So after this map and provocation, India decided to put the military on both the borders. So the border situation was further heated up. However, there was some problem at the level of the military and the civil government in India. The defense minister of India, Krishna Menon, he was focusing the Pakistan as a key enemy. Key enemy. However, the general of India, Thimayya, he was basically having the China-centric policy. So perhaps never they had a one united stand. One united stand. So Krishna Menon. The issue of BM Kaul, he was in the Army Service Corps and he was promoted to the rank of Lieutenant General by superseding many senior officers. BM Kaul was a relative of Prime Minister Nehru and he was in the Army Service Corps. He never had any experiences of the war and he was promoted to the rank of Lieutenant General after superseding many senior officers. So because of that, Thimayya sent resignation, throw away resignation on the table of Nehru. But after convincing of the Nehru, he agreed to take back. But BM Kaul, he was appointed as commander of NEFA. Now he is a Lieutenant General and he is now the commander of NEFA, who never had any experiences of the war. So issue of BM Kaul was really created the internal issue of the military in the public. Defense Minister Krishna Menon, he was having the Pakistan-centric policy, and he considered Pakistan as a key enemy, so the military should focus on this border, Pakistan border. But General Thimayya was having the China-centric policy, and he considered China as an equal threat. So this is the issue, but real tension came when Lieutenant General B.M. Kaul, Army Service Corps officer, was promoted to the rank of Lieutenant General after superseding many senior officers. So he superseded many senior officers and then he became the Lieutenant General. This is the reason why Thimayya had resigned. And once he resigned, that formally, obviously at this critical situation, the resignation of general was another setback to the government. So after convinced from the Nehru, Thimayya take back the resignation. But B.M. Kaul was given the commander of NEFA. So the most inexperienced Lieutenant General never had war experience or any military drill also. But he was appointed as a commander of NEFA. So he was not into the military operations, but basically he is a peacekeeper. He was in the Army Service Corps. Meanwhile, China did not wait for the long. Discussion was going on. The Chinese Prime Minister Zhou Enlai came to India, stayed many days here, long discussion with the Nehru. The Chinese Prime Minister was insisting on status quo. But Nehru wanted that Aksai Chin should be vacated. Aksai Chin became the lifeline for the Chinese because from the Xinjiang province to Lhasa, the road connecting to these was crossing through Aksai Chin. So therefore, the China had already constructed road and major infrastructure there. So the call for vacating the Aksai Chin was turned down by the Chinese. So after huge discussion, after huge discussion, 1962 winter, October 1962, China invaded over India. And within a month, China reached up to Lower Assam. The problem with the Indian soldier was that yet to decide that how to confront with the China. The government policy was to nullify the thing, but the Chinese had reached as far as Lower Assam. Entire northeast got disconnected. So entire northeast got disconnected because of this misadventure by the Chinese invasion. So India had lost the war by then. So within a month, China declared withdraw from India and agreed to return back 20 kilometers away from the international, from the LAC, 20 kilometers away from LAC, and expected that India would do the same thing. Suddenly, within a month of the invasion and capturing the vast territory, China decided to pull back and decided to go for the pre-war status quo, and pulled away from this settlement, from the captured territory. So this sudden decision was very much analyzed, the reason behind the withdrawal of China. Region of withdrawal of China. The first region, the onset of the winter season. Supply line was disconnected. Supply line was disconnected from China to India. Entire Himalayan belt was frozen. Entire Himalayan belt was frozen. So onset of the winter, supply line was, so entire Himalayan belt was frozen. Second, end of the Cuban Missile Crisis. During the Chinese invasion, the missile crisis in Cuba had created huge problem in India. Missile crisis of Cuba had created huge problem in the world. Second point, that Cuban Missile Crisis had ended. Cuban Missile Crisis. The Soviet Union was trying to place missile shield in Cuba, so both America and USSR came on the nuclear flashpoint, and therefore the whole world was putting attention there. Taking advantage of that, actually China invaded over India. And after the Cuban Missile Crisis ended, it was likely that America will target China, or America will interfere in China. So without giving any chance, China decided to pull out. So the Cuban Missile Crisis ended. There was likely interference of America. In India-China conflict. So there was likely interference of America in India-China conflict. India-China conflict. Likely interference of America in India-China conflict. So the American interference was detrimental for the survivability of the China. So without giving any chance, the Chinese decided to pull out. Third, initially it was looking out that the Communist Party of India will give support to the Chinese because of the communist regime. But later on, this support was turned off, and therefore there was no support to the Chinese. But thing is like that, the China had already captured Aksai Chin much before this India-China war. In this war particular, there was no such loss of territory or the gain of territory to any party. But this was entire war had happened in the mass calculation, and the various levels of the nationalist jingoism from both sides. It would have been avoided at all levels, like the way we try maturely to avoid the conflict, and the Chinese side also maturely to avoid the conflict. But this had not had happened during the time. So, but India-China war and the defeat of India at the hand of Chinese was a huge setback for India in the coming years. Not only demoralizing the morale, at the same time, India moved away from the attention of the global political scenario. And the position which was enjoyed by India at the global level because of its democratic values, this was actually been overlooked by the Western countries, and there started the rise of China in different sense. Rise of China in different sense. So India was the leader of the Afro-Asian countries, which India is trying to revive it. Afro-Asian countries. But after this defeat, this position was taken by China. In the recent G20 presidency, India is trying to revive the same glory in the being the voice of those countries who had not heard in the global level. So Afro-Asian countries was to be represented by India. So this position was again India trying to occupy. But after 1962 war, this position was taken by China. So now the world community started looking China as a major power in Asia rather than democratic India. India was gracefully pushed to sidelined. there was debate regarding the relevance of NAM also. Relevance of NAM. This is the international platform that India preferred. Being the founder member of NAM, India preferred. But rightly, there was no such comment come across from the NAM during the invasion of China, except in the Colombo Declaration, which was rejected by China. Nothing proper had happened to diffuse the tension between India and China. So there was general question that why we should remain in the international organization, which is not useful to us. Which is not useful to us. So there is a general question of the relevance of NAM. So undoubtedly, it was a major setback not only in India and China relation, but it had destabilized the entire politics of Asia. So we are trying to complete this historical perspective, not as an international relation. There is a different perspective of IR. So we have a different variations at IR, international relations. You will study separately. So after India-China War, 1964, Nehru died. Death of Nehru. Perhaps he was in the utter shock because he was the leader of the Indian national movement, and he started from the scratch when India got independent. He was in the forefront of making India independence. So obviously he left the country demoralized at this level. So he was in the utter shock thereafter. So after Nehru, there was an issue related to who would become the Prime Minister. In our country, always who after Nehru, who after Indira, so many questions always raised whenever there was a chances of successionship, because the country mostly managed by personality cult. So it was not easy target to manage the affair. So Lal Bahadur Shastri, he was the choice of the Congress President K. Kamraj. Before Shastri, Kamraj was considered as the prime ministerial candidate. But Kamraj himself said that since I don't know Hindi, so it would be difficult for us to become the prime minister without Hindi. So once Kamraj pulled out from the race, then the Lal Bahadur Shastri obviously became the prime minister. He was coming from a very humble background, a peasant family, a very poor background. And the Shastri becoming Prime Minister of India was a real victory of Indian democracy. This is the day you can see that democracy in India had got a very matured expression after Nehru. The personality-wise comparison between Nehru and Shastri, there was a huge difference at national and international level. Despite that, Shastri became Prime Minister, good support from Kamraj. At the same time, the challenges before the Lal Bahadur Shastri was huge. These challenges came in the form of the food crisis, the foreign policy, and Hindi English controversy. So major challenges Lal Bahadur Shastri got in legacy, and at the same time we have the invasion of Pakistan over India in 1965. So immediately after the China defeat, the invasion from Pakistan was giving tough challenge to India at both international and the domestic levels. So the challenges to the Lal Bahadur Shastri was huge. So before we proceed to the Lal Bahadur Shastri, challenges of the Official Language Act, which Nehru was facing and which Shastri had almost created the scenario. So Official Language Act. Why we need the official language? Look, during the time of national movement, we understood that we don't need any single official language in India. India would be a multilingual country. Therefore, in the 1920 Nagpur session or subsequent sessions, the Congress was more focusing on the making the state multilingual state. In the Nehru report also, we have seen the state was programmed in such a way that it had created the atmosphere for the linguistic reorganization. But when you have a central government, so how to run the central government? We need one link language. The communication between the states, communication between center and the state. So therefore, the requirement of the link language realized immediately after the India getting independence. And that was contradictory to the thoughts that we don't need a national language. Although emergence of the nation state in Europe had also started with the languages. So what are the issues and why Hindi was preferred and what type of compromises we have made to make the national language, which still had a pending issue despite the constitutional provision in Article 343. So these are the issues we need to discuss before we come across with. So Official Language Act. Official Language Act. And emergence of nation states in Europe, emergence of nation states in Europe was started with language. Language was considered as essential for nation building. Language was considered as essential for nation building. Since day one, Indian leadership accepted and promoted India as a multilingual country. And they agreed that India does not need to have the national language. Does not need to have the national language. INC also promoted its philosophies in regional languages. Indian National Congress had in Nagpur session of Indian National Congress, it was decided to organize the INC on the basis of language. Linguistic reorganization of Indian National Congress. Linguistic reorganization of Indian National Congress. In order to run central government, one needs to have one official language. One needs to have one official language. So for communication between the different states and in order to run the central government, one needs to have official language, and not possible with multiple language, because the central government will communicate to all the states in one language, and in between the language also states also there would be. So when we adopted the federal structures, the federal government cannot be run on the multilingual basis. During the time of Indian national movement, I told you, was convinced to remove English as official language after independence. Gandhi, Tagore, they were unanimous on one issue, that the genius of the people could not flourish in foreign language. Intellect of the people could not flourish in the foreign language. English is a language rich in philosophy, literature, science, technology, etc. And also English is a global language. English is a language of international trade and diplomacy. So many realized that we must maintain the continuity. So leaders of the international movement convinced to remove English as official language after independence. Gandhi believed that the genius of people could not flourish in the foreign language. But when you say English as a foreign language, but English is a very rich in literature, science, philosophy, technology, and it is a global language. English is language of international trade and diplomacy. So English could not be ruled out. And we should recognize the importance of English. And advocated continued use of English. So many leaders were in favor, particularly in the southern Indian states. They were more concerned about the imposition of Hindi. So leaders of the southern Indian states they wanted to give more importance and advocated continued use of English. So genius of the people could not flourish in foreign language. So Gandhi believed that genius of the people, Tagore also, could not flourish in foreign language. So reason that what is the acceptability of Hindi or the disadvantage of Hindi that has to be there. Look, before partition there was a debate between Hindi and the Hindustani. This language was very popular. Hindi was rich in Sanskrit language, Sanskrit words, Sanskrit words. Hindustani had Persian influence. So Hindi was very much influenced by the Persian and Urdu. So that had become Hindustani. So difference between Hindi and Hindustani was that Hindi had more influence from the Persian and the Urdu. Hindustani had simple grammar. Its grammar was not so difficult. Both Hindus and Muslims were comfortable with Hindustani. And this Hindustani language can be written in both in Urdu and Devanagari script. And it was also very much accepted by the many known Hindi leaders. So Hindustani language was looking more preferable than the Hindi in the pre-partition period. The reason is very simple. The Hindi was more influenced under the Persian and the Urdu script, Urdu words. So influence of the Persian and the Urdu influence that make Hindi Hindustani. Hindustani had very simple grammar and was easily acceptable for both Hindus and Muslims. And it was written in the both script, that is Urdu and Devanagari. And it was accepted by many known Hindi leaders as well. Many southern Indian states had started using Hindustani. Therefore, Hindustani was getting more weightage, privilege, and all these languages was done. But during the national movement, there was communalization of Urdu. The Muslim League exclusively marking the Urdu as a language of the Muslims. Exclusively marking Urdu as the language of the Muslim. Resulted in Sanskritization of Hindi, and then gradually Urdu and Persian word was removed from Hindustani language, and it was a reinvention of the Hindi. So therefore, the making Hindi as an official language was with a very main debate in the Constituent Assembly as well. Once the Urdu was communalized, and then obviously Sanskritization of the Hindustani language again, the Sanskrit word was selected and Hindu. Look at 1925, INC amended its constitution, started using Hindustani and the regional languages. So Hindustani influence of Urdu and Persian on Hindi. So 1925 there was amendment in the constitution, 1925 Kanpur session. The first Indian women president, Sarojini Naidu, and the constitution was amended that Hindustani became the language of the Indian National Congress and the regional languages to be used. Nehru Committee report also recommended Hindustani written in both Urdu and Devanagari script, and English could continue for some times. English would continue for some times. So Nehru Committee report, it was recommended Hindustani written in both Urdu and Devanagari script. However, the growth of communal passion complicated the linguistic issue. Urdu was communalized by Muslim League, and therefore Sanskritization of Hindi had started. So the Congress leader Purushottam Das Tandon, he started the communication of the Congress party by removing the many Persian influenced, and this is called Sanskritization of Hindi, and this was a purification of Hindi language, removing the Persian and the Urdu word and putting the Sanskrit word. So the communalism not only confined to, and you must be knowing that the Hindi-Urdu controversy, that was the main reason behind establishment of Muslim League. Main reason behind the establishment of Muslim League, Hindu-Urdu controversy. So purification is called purification of Hindi by removing Persian and Urdu words from it. After partition of India, the chances of Hindustani language was almost died. So therefore, once the Urdu as a language of the Muslims was claimed by Pakistan, the chances of Hindustani language in India got over. Or even in the Congress session, Congress Legislative Party voted 78-77 votes in favor of Hindi. So the communal passion was working in both the sides. Communal passion was working in both the sides. So as a symbol of secularist, but Hindi won a vote at Congress Legislative Party. supporters of the Hindi had deliberately made this. So how the solution will be reached? We will talk about that what is the status of the Constituent Assembly and how the Article 343 was arranged in the Constitution. So we'll see the next session about the Hindi making the constitutional provision in Article 343. So okay, so that's all for the day. We will see Monday.